In this Principles of Persuasion update video, I'd like to fill you in on what you can expect for Week 13, Classes 25 and 26, provide you some details about the upcoming major assignment, the value presentation and outline assignment, and finally walk you through that assignment to give you some details about the assignment description and expectations, and of course, as always, provide a brief opportunity for extra credit included in this as well. So first, Week 13 provides us with Class 25 and 26. Class 25 turns our attention to public moral argument and what we'll be describing as the long deliberation. In many regards, the purpose of this class is to set you up for success for that value presentation assignment by giving you some of the theoretical underpinnings about how we argue about values and what public moral argument is in the first place. Class 26 is reserved for you and is a work day. That workday should provide you a little extra time to submit Writing Journal 8 and also to spend some time thinking about your topic for that values presentation. Notably, Writing Journal number 8 asks you to send in some ideas about your topic so that I can provide you some feedback before that value presentation and outline is due. The second thing I want to do in today's update video is overview the value presentation and outline assignment in broad form. So the first thing to note about that is a 3 to 5 minute speech assignment. Much like this, you'll be recording it and submitting it online through Canvas, through a webcam, or some sort of video recorded means. The second thing is it's not just a speech presentation. You should also include with your speech submission an outline that helps overview your main points 1 and 2 and your introduction and conclusion. The final thing to note is that this assignment, the speech presentation, is worth 50 points and the outline is worth another 25 points for a total of 75 remaining points this semester. You probably have some questions about how to develop this assignment and what some tips and tricks might be, so I thought I'd lead us off before going through the assignment description in full with a couple of good ideas for tips. The first is that the topic choice is totally up to you as we think about what might be made a public moral argument. My ask of you is to think about something that relates to a technical or public sphere and think about the values components associated with that. You're strongly encouraged to reach out to me through Google Hangouts or even send me an email message so that we can bounce some topic ideas off one another. The second thing to note is that because this is a values-based argument, it's really functionally about the format and structure you build the argument in. In our lecture in Class 25, we'll talk about public moral argument and the structure for building an effective values-based argument, and of course we've already done that back in Class 7. So you're strongly encouraged to return back to the Class 7 materials, which detail things about how to build an effective fact, value, and policy case. Spend some time looking at that value case section on the value object, value criteria, and value application, and you'll be well on your way to developing a strong introduction, body, and conclusion for your upcoming speech presentation and outline assignment. Let's take a look at that assignment by looking at how we might structure our outline through the introduction, body, and conclusion, and even looking at an example I'll help share with you today. So the first thing to know, you will need to include an introduction in your upcoming outline and the presentation itself. As scholars of communication and students of persuasion, you know that an effective introduction needs to include an attention getter. It needs to provide some significance to inform its audience about why this value matters to them. It needs to signal a clear thesis statement within the first 30 to 40 seconds. I believe, I argue, I think for the following reasons. And it needs to identify its main points and transition into the first main point. So let's think about how this might work in the context of a speech that I'm interested in related to tree houses and a value that I'll describe as nostalgic animism. Imagine my introduction goes something like this. For many, the treehouse is an idyllic space of childhood memories, and often a place where they found privacy and escapism into nature. And that sense of connection with nature that many children experiences in treehouse often fades as we go into adulthood. Indeed, for many of us, our best experiences of nature is often through television. And so today I want to argue that television provides us with a unique value system to help us understand both our childhood and our connection to nature through a concept I'll call nostalgic animism. And I want to argue today that nostalgic animism is ever more important as we increasingly get disconnected from nature and seek to find ways not just to plug into technology, but actually to plug into nature as well. As we transition from our introduction to our first main point, we need to set up and define our value object. When we set up the value object, we need to first define the value we're talking about, and also not just define it, but explain how this relates to a wide audience. And we need to transition that definition and description of the value towards a context of consideration. So recall my introduction, I set up the concept of nostalgic animism and I put it within the context of something like television shows. So let's see how I might develop that in my first main point. The first thing I need to do is define nostalgic animism. And I'll define nostalgic animism as providing audiences a sense of their childhood in a way that connects them back to nature with a feeling of wanderlust or connection, a longing to be in nature, and a desire that that nature comes alive when you interact with it. Perhaps you remember being a young child and having a sense that perhaps the trees, the grass, and all of those various things had a certain vibrancy and aliveness to them. Or perhaps you're familiar with indigenous theories of nature, which also often suggest that there's an aliveness to nature. I'll draw on these values of animism and aliveness in nature to argue that these television representations take us back in time, connect us with our inner child, and make us feel as if we're able to bond with nature or sense nature in a way that we were previously disconnected from. Toward this end, I'm making the argument that nostalgic animism blends representations of nature with representations of our childhood and comfort in order to make the wild or to make the outdoors seem more palatable and comfortable from the center of our living rooms. In our main points too, we have to set up a value hierarchy. We have to suggest that though we've identified previously a value, there are other values that circulate around it and oftentimes challenge it or conflict with it in ways that cause a contest. We don't just need to explain how these values are in contest, but we need to zero in and focus specifically on the context that we're considering. So let's return to my speech about tree houses and about the connection we might have to nature through childhood and television, and look at how we might make this argument in main point 2. In main point 2, I might argue that many television shows are about product placement and commercial sales. And I might make the argument that shows that are about nature tend to be about education and information and this kind of educational entertainment, this infotainment as it's often called. However, I would argue that this infotainment is at contrast with commercial sales, and that something like nostalgic animism helps blend those ideas in ways that make nature both more sellable, more packageable, and also more comfortable. So it's not just about connecting to nature, but nostalgic animism also helps facilitate sales. Toward this end, I would probably connect it to the exemplar I'm focused on, and that's the television show Treehouse Masters. If you haven't seen Treehouse Masters, it's hosted by a character by the name of Pete Nelson, and Pete Nelson builds treehouses that often exceed $100,000. These topiary temples, these majestic marvels, these very expensive arboreal architectural sanctuaries are very elaborate, and in doing that, he creates a whole lot of connections to nature with the building them into the trees, but also re-entrenches them within the home makeover genre, emphasizing the things like the right granite countertops or the right ways to build in harmoniousness with nature. And so he blends the experience of childhood and with a treehouse and privacy and escapism with the experience of nature and getting up into the trees with the experience of commercial product sales in ways that yields viewers to feel like they're connecting with nature, sense of their childhood, while also still wanting to make a commercial purchase. As you turn towards your conclusion, just like any written conclusion, you'll need to include some sort of a review and a statement of your thesis. You should review each of your main points. Today I told you a little bit about and then also summarize your thesis and end with a clincher. Now, a clincher can of course be a return full circle to a story you opened with. A clincher can be a powerful quote or a well-delivered fact or some sort of hair-raising statement. Let's think about how we might develop a conclusion in relation to the example we've been explaining. And as I conclude today, I think it's important to think about how this method of nostalgic animism isn't just common in television shows, but indeed is something that other scholars of communication and persuasion should think about. Indeed, we can think about how Disney shows and a whole host of movies like Avatar have used this sense of nostalgia and this sense of aliveness in nature or animism to better be able to draw audiences in and create persuasive appeals. That's of course just one idea for a conclusion and loosely shelled out. And of course, I did not include the necessary research throughout this speech, but of course, as I developed this in a written project meant for a journal submission, I certainly have that research, and if you'd like to talk more about how I would include my research, or how you might include research in your upcoming values presentation and outline assignment, don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'm happy to help structure those speeches with you through office hours. Those virtual office hours are available for you for exactly that purpose. Finally, the third objective for today's video update video is to provide you some future directions and orientations about where we're going in the upcoming week. I want to make sure you know that in the upcoming Thursday, writing journal number 8 is due. That asks you to come up with your topic for the value presentation and outline assignment. Also, coming up the week after on April 28th, writing journal number 9 is due. However, you could get a head start on writing journal number 9 if you find yourself with some extra time. That writing journal asks you to essentially do a self-review or a self-reflection of your performance and progress throughout this semester. With those upcoming agenda items out of the way, that concludes our update video. However, as in the past, I wanted to provide a brief moment for extra credit, and so I'll ask you to complete a survey which is posted online for 5 points this week, which asks you to complete a few questions which will help me determine when we should host our study session. It's my goal and it's my hope that we can have a live session held through something like Zoom or WebEx where we Skype in to complete a Jeopardy study guide. If we can't do that live, I could just post those materials, but my hope is we can get some consensus on a time that works and we can all organize together to be able to do that study guide material. Toward that end, I wanted to note these videos and all PowerPoint materials will not be available during that final exam, and so it will be important that you're both taking notes throughout these videos and making sure that you're studied up as we head into that May 6th final exam date. If you have any questions or concerns about the past assignments, upcoming assignments, or future exam, don't hesitate to reach out to me at any time. Of course, I'm available through the Google Hangouts line, and you can send me an email. My virtual office hours are posted here, so we can set up a consultation if we need to have an additional time to talk. Thanks for joining me with this one. I'll see you next Monday with another update video, and Tuesday for our final lecture of the semester.